Red Polly.
Dusty.
Blue Poncho.
Tupac.
Street.
Hey, Wilson Hoosier. Hey, Elvis.
Blue 58.
All right, everyone. Welcome to Health Matters. This is episode 7, week 7 recap as we head into week 8. Brandon, take it away.
Yeah, it was a fun week 7. A lot of close games this week. Not a lot of notable injuries, but Tyler, take us away with the injury roundup this week.
Yeah, thanks, Brandon. I think one of the biggest ones was probably Deshaun Watson. The dog pound was happy to have their quarterback, but unfortunately for them, he started off slow, went 1 for 5 with an interception, and then took a big hit where he hit his head on the back down on the turf, but also injured his shoulder again. Doc, we know that he's been dealing with that subscap. They're calling it micro tearing strain. What are your thoughts on this? Is he going to miss even more time now? Is this something that's going to be a multi-week thing, or should he be back this week?
Yeah, Tyler, Deshaun has this, interesting strain in the front of his shoulder. We look at this from a shoulder surgery injury type of perspective. It's not it's calling it a muscle strain of the subscap, which is a pretty unique injury in of itself. So usually it's a partial tearing, partial fraying of the tendon or inflammation around the front of the shoulder. He clearly aggravated it. He was holding his arm at the side after this injury. I would expect him to be back this week. We're going to see how the practice goes, but he may be limited this week in practice, my suspicion, and we may see him out 1 to 2 weeks. Would not surprise me at all.
Yeah, that's going to be one to keep an eye on. He's definitely had an abysmal start to his return, so hopefully he can get better throughout the season and do what he's supposed to be doing. Another big one, Chiefs linebacker Nick Bolton, he dislocated his wrist. He was in writhing pain, rolling around the sideline there, right on the field, so it kind of stopped game for a little while. So that left wrist was dislocated. What do you think on that one, Doc?
Yeah, I've taken care of a number of dislocated wrist, fingers on the sideline. The dislocated wrist is really a big injury. And, when you got a dislocated wrist, the x-rays are negative, which doesn't surprise me. But what you have are about 8 bones in the wrist joint that connect your forearm to the rest of the hand. And it generally dislocates or is injured the ligaments in an area where the ligaments are commonly torn and then the bones dislocate. These are really hard. Sometimes you can pop a finger back in, but these are really hard to put back on the sideline, put back in the training room or in the blue medical tent, just because the magnitude of injury, it's a significant amount of force. Many times these can just be casted, splinted, and the ligaments heal. But there's sometimes you need to put pins in the wrist joint to stabilize this for multiple weeks, take those out, then come back and ramp up play. I'd expect him to be out multiple weeks, if not IR, with this injury, just given the magnitude of the tear that has to happen when you dislocate your wrist.
And moving on, we had Dolphins wide receiver Jalen Waddle. He left the game with back spasms. He was ultimately able to return the game with 6 receptions for 63 yards. But all in all, it was not enough for the Dolphins to pull off a victory against the Eagles.
Yeah, Ryan, that was a bad injury for him to, miss the first half, but he came back and did well. So that's a good one to watch out this week on practice reports. Tyler, tell us about Lions running back Mo.
Yeah, so Mohamed Ibrahim of Detroit, rookie running back, went out with a dislocated hip. He was taken to a nearby Baltimore hospital and had surgery, had to stay the night in Baltimore. It's a tough injury for him. He's had a injury history with an Achilles in college, and then he was in training camp. He was put on IR for injury as well. So a tough blow for him and Detroit, who's already down in the depth in their running backs.
Yeah, dislocated hip, Tyler, is a pretty brutal injury. It's a ton of energy that goes into it. There is a predilection for running backs to get this. Why? The knee and leg is bent at 90 degrees, just like this. Here's your pelvis, here's your thigh bone. And what happens is you come to the ground or you come down like this, you break the back wall of the socket of your hip. It's called the acetabulum. It's in your pelvis. And we've had numerous of these I've had to take care of. A lot of times you can just get a small chip fracture, you can get a bigger fracture, but clearly when he was on the cart, his leg was up, it was flexed, and was clearly not in the right position. So with that is a really big injury, and almost always needs to, number one, be reduced urgently because of the blood supply to the hip joint and the bones around the hip, to make sure there's you get good healing and you don't get what we call bone death down the road. Bo Jackson, if you remember, is a similar type of injury that he had to deal with. But if you get this back quickly, which was the absolute right thing, you get surgery with plate screws to fix the back of the acetabulum where that hip socket is, to stabilize the joint. You can rehab, and we will and should see him next year. We've had many running backs with this injury, with and without surgery, that have come back and had successful careers.
Yeah, hopefully that rookie can get a chance to get back on the field next year. Packers safety Darnell Savage, he was out last week with a calf injury. He came back and tried to play, made it through the first half, but ended up leaving the game, so he'll be out again. Watch out for him on the injury report.
Another bad news for the Browns. Running back Jerome Ford, he went down with an ankle injury, ultimately left the game, so fantasy owners need to keep an eye on that. He was seen leaving the stadium in a boot. Doc, what are your thoughts on that? Did that look like a high ankle, low ankle? What are you thinking?
Yeah, it looked initially like a high ankle. We'll see what the MRI, I'm sure they'll get, looks like, but we're probably seeing about 2 to 3 weeks, maybe up to 4 if it's a bigger one. So yeah, the Browns are pretty beat up. Probably the most beat up team this week from week 7 recap.
Yeah, and then another injury was DK Metcalf. Obviously didn't injure in the game because he didn't play, but this was DK Metcalf's first missed game in his career. He's been limited or been questionable on the report for a few weeks now, between his ribs and then his hip injury. And this week he was on there for both and just couldn't go for this game, which was a big hit to Seattle, but they were still able to pull it out.
Yeah, so everyone check in with the predictors.com for more injury information and up-to-date stuff all the time. It's your go-to source for what's going on with your players.
Yeah, concussion protocol this week on the good side. There's no notable players in there right now, so keep an eye out throughout the week to see if anybody pops up on the concussion protocol.
Yeah, although we had a quarterback that wasn't returned, right? A coaching decision, even though it cleared the concussion protocol yesterday.
All right, let's dive into the fantasy performers of the week from injuries and see how we did. And take us away, Tyler.
Yeah, well, starting with Kareem Hunt, I know a lot of people thought that Jerome Ford was going to get more of the carries and thus Kareem Hunt wasn't going to do as well. However, Kareem Hunt came through with 2 touchdowns, only 31 rushing yards. So it did look like maybe they were trying to put him on a count a little or take it a little bit easier with that, but did get the 2 touchdowns. So a great performance this week for him. Plus with the Jerome Ford injury, they had to rely on him a little bit.
Yeah, the Browns running back looked like they were just playing him in spots. They really needed him for sure. Another Brown we talked about earlier in last segment, it's Deshaun Watson and his abysmal performance of negative 0.8 points. That 1 for 5 performance and an interception. Tyler, what do fantasy owners need to do about him?
You need to bench him or you need to get someone else. I think this shoulder injury is going to be something that's bothering him for a while, even if he's playing with it. I just don't think it's going to be something that he can just get through and get you a ton of points. So I think you have to find a different quarterback. Maybe it's a matchup thing each week that you're looking for, but I don't think Deshaun Watson is the guy moving forward for your team.
Moving on, we had rookie running back for the Lions, Jahmyr Gibbs. He came back after missing the last 2 weeks with a hamstring injury, and he showed up with 27 points, had a hell of a game, 68 rushing yards, touchdown, 58 receiving yards, but ultimately they ended up losing to the Ravens.
Yeah, this is interesting, Ryan. When you get enough rest after your hamstring, you do well. I'm still worried he could have another injury this season, re-aggravation of the hamstring, an ankle, knee, something else. So fantasy owners, keep an eye on him.
Yeah, and I think with Jahmyr too, Dan Campbell, head coach of the Lions, came out and said that they wanted to only use him as needed, but because of their injury to David Montgomery, he was going to have to rely on him more. So I think that definitely helped in the fantasy sector. But like you said, Doc, this could be an issue moving forward, especially with that depth they now have in the running back room if they have to overuse him.
Yeah, Tyler, again, health matters. Like you got RB1, RB2, health matters. You're making coaching decisions, but these are all part of our algorithms to help you do better with fantasy and gambling.
Another running back who was coming back from a hamstring injury, Green Bay's Aaron Jones, didn't fare as well. Only had about 8 points, 35 yards. A tough day for him. So you see that hamstring injury really affecting him. They had to rely on A.J. Dillon a little bit more.
Yeah, again, he was out a number of games. We know that Aaron Jones's hamstring was pretty significant, Tyler, but 8 points, 35 yards. Hamstrings are tricky, and this was a problem for Aaron. He wasn't his usual self.
Yeah. In Thursday's night's performance, though, Trevor Lawrence, who tweaked his knee earlier and had short rest, he came out and he had a pretty good performance, 18 points, 204 yards and a touchdown in that win versus the Saints. So it's good to see some guys get back quickly on those short turnaround weeks. All right, Monday night, we have a pretty big game tonight, the 49ers versus the Vikings, the NFC matchup, and a bunch of injuries in this one to talk about, guys. We got McCaffrey, he's supposed to play, Trent Williams doubtful, and Debo out with the hairline shoulder fracture. He'll miss minimum 2 games is what they're saying. What's some thoughts on this, guys?
Yeah, McCaffrey's supposed to play. He's got this oblique injury, which we've talked about extensively. Check it out at thepredictors.com. We got a lot of information on McCaffrey. He's such a good player. He knows how to get back from injuries, come back from a lot of injuries. This one's interesting in that the oblique, he has this tear. The ribs were supposedly spared, which is a good thing. So we'll see him back. I think we'll see him a little bit limited in overall performance, especially this first game back, because it's so important, the running back taking hits to that oblique area, and it's easy to re-bruise that, re-irritate it, get more inflammation. Debo, hairline fracture of the shoulder. This is interesting. The hairline fracture of the shoulder means basically there's a break there. There's a fracture. You broke it, but it's incomplete or a very small fracture that might only be visible on CAT scan or CT scan, not even on X-ray. But usually is an area in this top area of the shoulder. It might be the acromion. It could be the outer side of his humerus. Again, don't have the actual CT scan, but it's usually an area right around the top here. It could get better in about 2 to 4 weeks. Now, that's a little bit aggressive. You can't rush biology of a fracture to heal. They do take time, and that is generally 4 to 6 weeks minimum to get the pain and get your motion back and get your strength back. So I'm not confident it's just going to be 2 games. That's certainly 2 games minimum, and I would expect more. And I'm actually potentially thinking IR for him, but they've certainly resisted to this point.
Yeah, that's a tough blow for them. On the Vikings side, you have Justin Jefferson, who's on IR with that hamstring, and then another wide receiver, Jalen Naylor, who he's been limited to all week with a hamstring. Tyler, where are they going to find their offense at tonight for the Vikings?
Yeah, they're going to have to rely on TJ Hawkinson at the tight end position, I think, if they want to get that offense really rolling. Obviously, down a few weapons, playing a tough team. They may have a fighting chance with all the injuries on the other side, but I think Kirk Cousins is really going to have to step up. He's going to have to find his big tight end, and that's where they're going to have to get a little bit of a spark from.
Yeah, that'll be a fun one to watch tonight. Tune in, everyone. Let's look ahead to some of the Week 8 games that might be affected by some injuries. We got the Raiders and the Lions on Monday. Will Jimmy G be back is the question. They're saying he should be, and how will he play? What do you think?
Yeah, I think Jimmy G will be back. His back was significant enough that he actually went to the hospital. Keep that in mind. Of course, all the tests came back at least reasonably negative, but Jimmy G knows how to recover from injury. He's been out quite a bit. I think we're going to see him back. May not see the same mobility. We're predicting down about 15 to 20% overall in mobility as well as overall passing. But he's going to be back. We expect him to be down.
Yeah, and looking on the other side, the Lions losing, Mo for that hip dislocation, and David Montgomery's been on it in and out all year. Can Jamar maintain that load with that hamstring? What's the Lions going to do, Tyler?
Yeah, listen, I think it comes down to if Jameer is good, if he stays healthy, then I think they'll be fine. He's a tough, bruising running back, so they can definitely get a bunch out of him. Again, he's not going to get much rest, and if he does, they're going to have to rely on someone to step up into that position. But they have some great wide receivers too, so I think they'll be just fine.
Yeah, hopefully so. They've been having a good year and had a little slip up this week, but let's keep the momentum rolling going into week 8. We have the Saints versus the Colts and quarterback issues all around there. Anthony Richardson, the rookie, had season-ending shoulder surgery on his AC joint, so he's out. So they're going to be looking at their backup. And Derek Carr, who was already struggling with the AC joint, appeared to hurt his groin in the game against the Jaguars when they lost. So which team's quarterback's going to step up? Who knows?
I like Gardner Minshew. He's been playing well. I mean, honestly, you could say that Cleveland got a little bit of a break at the end of their game against the Colts this past weekend, and really Minshew should have brought the Colts to a win there. The Cleveland got a few penalty calls at the end that gave them a few more chances. So really Gardner Minshew's been playing well for them. Derek Carr, like you said, he has that groin now. It looked like at the end of last game. I'd say another big injury there is Chris Olave with that toe. If they can get that figured out and some of that timing figured out, looked like they had some issues with timing and receivers breaking off routes there, then maybe that they have a chance. But I don't mind the Colts in this game if they can keep doing what they were doing.
Great. And wrap us up, Ryan. Who's the last one we're looking at?
Yeah, we got to keep an eye out on the Packers. They were coming off the bye this week, played a Mile High against Denver, lost by 2, but they came out of the bye with a larger injury report than how they came into it, and they lost 3 more guys during the game last night. So they got to really focus on getting healthier, getting back together, getting there, supporting their young quarterback so they can actually try to be competitive and win some games this season.
Yeah, any thoughts on the Packers, Tyler?
Yeah, the Packers need to figure it out. And I don't know. Jordan Love, that was a bad throw at the end, that interception that Denver got there. And it's going to come down to some secondary stuff too. As you talked about, Savage went out and Eric Stokes is hurt. So if they can figure out their secondary issues and injuries there, then I think they can have a chance. But luckily they're getting their running backs back, so hopefully their offense can get started.
Nice. All right, everyone. We got a bunch of players to watch. We got Watson, we got McCaffrey, we got Trent Williams, you've got Jimmy G, David Montgomery, Jameer, Darnell Savage, again and again. Health matters. Thanks for listening. Follow us at thepredictors.com. Plenty more information there for you, fans, to help you out with your game.